Everyone knows what Minecraft SMPs are, whether it be the annual Minecraft phase or the Dream SMP, with people like Wifebiter and Lunatic Stan Enabler. The point is, everyone who's ever played the game has heard about them. But what about servers nobody's ever heard of? A server where a man joins and 7 days later is found hanging lifeless in his closet. This is the mysterious death of Trevor Walker. The story starts here, with Oscar Walker, having a very basic channel with 9 videos all uploaded on a single day, November 15th, 2024. That might seem odd, but if we check the channel's description, it starts to make more sense. Oscar writes, "Some old videos I found on my brother Trevor's hard drive that he recorded a week before he took his life. I hadn't heard from him in the morning like I usually do, so I called, but there was no answer. So I then called the police to check on him, and they found his body hanging in the closet. They said he probably died around midnight or very early on the 11th. We still don't know why he did it. I just wish I could have been there to help. I had no clue he was going through anything." And then he explains why he uploaded the videos. So the reason they were all uploaded on a single day is because Oscar likely just dragged them from one folder straight to the upload page, resulting in all of them being uploaded simultaneously. But that doesn't help us figure out what happened to his brother. You might be thinking, well, that's obvious, isn't it? He decided life isn't worth living. It's an unfortunate answer, but it's an answer nonetheless. And yes, that's true, but why? Oscar admits nobody knows why he did it, and while these videos might not have the answer to that question, they might give some insight into figuring that out. And trust me, this iceberg stretches far deeper than you could ever imagine. Of the 9 videos on Oscar's channel, 7 of them are labeled by recording date and 2 are untitled. According to the Windows taskbar, the 2 untitled videos were recorded on January 5th, 2022 and January 8th, 2022. If we assemble the videos in chronological order, the timeline lines up like this. So let's start at the beginning, January 4th, 2022. The video starts pretty normal, with Trevor joining the server using the address dominuswoods.eternos.me, which is the default IP for an Eterno server. After he joins, we're introduced to 2 of the members, Back to Cali and Piggy Playing, 2 of the 3 suspects we'll see in the decline of Trevor's mental state. We also see that Trevor's IGN is Big T 2002, so he's either 19 or 20 depending on when his birthday is. After greeting the other 2 members of the server, he goes on and plays survival as usual, until we see Piggy Playing ask Back to Cali if Anthony gave him permission to invite someone, and he says he did. So, based on this, we know that whoever Back to Cali is invited Trevor to the server, and whoever Anthony is the server owner. Trevor asks if anyone else is on the server, and Cali says no. So the only 3 suspects are Piggy Playing, Back to Cali, and Dominus Woods, whose name is actually Anthony, who we've yet to see. Trevor plays for a while, and we find out that Anthony is offline because he's playing something else. After a bit, Trevor starts a conversation about his life, asking everyone what they do in real life. Piggy Playing says that Anthony is his real-life friend, and Cali just says that he works. Trevor tells us a bit about his own life, saying that he's studying and wants to be a mechanic of some kind, but that his parents have safety concerns. And then Piggy Playing almost says something about Anthony's parents, but stops himself mid-sentence. Trevor saying stuff like this is quite strange, and only confirms that something must have happened between now and the end of the week to cause him to have such a sharp change in mental state. If he was really as mentally unwell as someone a week away from deciding to end it all, then why would he be talking about his plans for the future without even a hint of doubt or distress? It's very possible that Trevor simply doesn't want to open up about that, but it seems odd that he would start a conversation about it only to take it in a direction that makes it seem as if he's fine and hopeful for his future. It's also possible that Trevor deliberately wants to seem that way so that nobody worries about him. But at this point, it's just speculation. So for now, let's keep it in mind and move on. After that conversation, Trevor plays as usual for a while, and the last oddity in the video is when he comes across some trees with chunks missing for seemingly no reason. Aside from the leaves and the conversation from earlier, there isn't much to get out of this video. However, we now have 3 suspects and some interesting information to work with as we move forward. January 5th, 2022. Trevor logs onto the server and is greeted by Back to Cali, and then just plays as normal for a while. After that, we see Anthony log on and he's greeted by the other 2 members. Back to Cali says that Trevor is going to like him, and he just responds with a simple, "We'll see." But after that, nobody says anything for the rest of the video. However, right near the end, we can hear something interesting. Without thinking twice about it, it might just seem like he got up to get a jacket like he said, and that's because he did, but we heard him do it. So obviously this means that he has a microphone, but opts not to talk and instead type, which might mean he's insecure about his voice. That lends credibility to the idea that Trevor has some problems, possibly anxiety or something along those lines. However, the leap from not wanting to talk on video to being suicidal is huge. So there's clearly something more going on that we're yet to see. This is a pretty significant detail though, and gives us a little look into the mind of Trevor, so we'll keep it in mind as we move forward. However, we aren't going on to day 3 just yet. If you remember the timeline from earlier, you know that this Untitled video takes place on January 5th as well, and is the point of view of Back to Cali recording some gameplay. He's playing the game in a very small tab, and we can see a Discord conversation in the background, as well as his name, Brian. The gameplay is nothing special, and the video ends when Anthony joins the server. However, the Discord chat in the background is a bit odd. It's a conversation between Brian and Anthony. It reads, "I might take a break from the server, is that okay?" "Why?" "I'm kinda busy." "If you insist, you can, but dang, I was hoping we could finish my house. But no, everyone just always leaves me." Sorry, man." "No, it's fine, just be like the rest. I learned when I was a kid, everyone leaves sooner or later." "Well, maybe not for long, alright? What are you, my dad?" You know what, I'll check to be sure." "I just checked and I don't even have to go. My boss just canceled the plans. We can build more of your house tomorrow." Okay. It's a very weird conversation. Anthony doesn't seem to be the cool and chill person that the other members claimed he was in the first video. If anything, he seems like what Trevor was expected to be like. He seems very pessimistic and clearly has some childhood trauma. He even guilt trips Brian into calling off work. I find it hard to believe that he managed to find free time at the exact moment he needed to within a single minute. But this also raises the question of why Trevor has this video in the first place. Oscar says that he found all of these videos on Trevor's hard drive, so at some point someone sent this video to him, and as a result, it was uploaded to YouTube. But why? My best guess is that Brian wanted to inconspicuously show Trevor that Anthony isn't as nice as they're saying he is, so he sent him this video. Which makes sense, as we know Brian is the one who invited him to the server, so clearly he would have a level of care for him that the other members don't. But right now, Anthony is the biggest suspect, as he's shown himself to at the very least be quite manipulative. The entirety of the Untitled video is itself another clue, so we'll keep that in mind too, but other than that, there isn't much useful information here. At least not with the context we have so far, so let's move on to day 3. January 6th, 2022. Nothing of interest really happens in this video up until Brian joins, and Anthony asks if he wants to help him build, but Brian says he doesn't have much time, and their conversation continues. "It won't take long, don't worry. I'm just busy, sorry. First you try to leave the server, and now this? Just leave if that's what you want. I just need some time, I'm busy." "Yeah man, just leave like always." "It's not like that. Then stop pretending like it is." "Yeah, I guess I can help a little bit. Thanks man." Trevor almost interjects, but ends up choosing not to. After a while, we see Anthony compliment Brian's build, saying that Sean can't build like this, presumably talking about Piggy playing, and then says that he needs to work on a server bug, but Trevor questions him about it, saying he's had no issues so far, which we've seen to be true from his perspective, as aside from the bug he leaves, there haven't been any issues. Anthony deflects the question, simply saying it's hard to explain, and then instantly leaves. Trevor asks Brian if he's had any problems, and he says that he hasn't, but Anthony wouldn't lie. However, that doesn't really hold much weight considering we know Anthony is a manipulative person based on the Untitled video. We don't get much information from this video, but Anthony further establishes himself as a very manipulative person during his conversation with Brian, and also seems to be hiding something under the guise of a server bug. But it's hard to determine his motive just yet. But even so, Anthony is further solidified as our prime suspect in the crime of severely damaging Trevor's mental health. Because keep in mind, we still haven't seen any major red flags from Trevor, so something must push him over the edge within the next few videos. It's not really a question of when, but what. January 7th, 2022. This video starts off running, straight to this unfinished castle where the other 3 server members are. Trevor takes a seat in a deep slate chair, and makes a remark about it in the chat, before being punched off by Anthony and told not to sit there. Trevor tells him to calm down because it's just a game, and Anthony gets upset by this, telling him not to lecture him. He runs the server and Trevor can't just make his own rules, and then Sean agrees with him. Trevor is surprised by this, reasonably so, and then Anthony tells him not to lecture them, and Trevor leaves. A little while later, Anthony tells Sean to check his DMs, and leaves. Trevor asks why Anthony acts so rude, and Sean tells him not to say that. Trevor tells him that he doesn't have to do everything Anthony tells him, but Sean doesn't agree. He tells Trevor that Anthony does a lot and deserves support, before saying he's gonna go check his DMs and then leaves the server before Trevor can continue the conversation. He then plays the game as usual for a while before ending the video. This video is weird to say the least, and further cements Anthony as an incredibly odd person. Not only does he act incredibly defensive over something as simple as a chair, the act of Trevor just saying chill sends him into a rant about rules and respect. On top of that, Sean is very clearly falling for his manipulation, agreeing with his nonsensical anger and failing to see how unreasonable Anthony's behavior is. We also see Brian online at the start of the video, but he never interjects any opinion into the conversation, which either means he's not buying Anthony's manipulation or he's just too afraid to say anything. This makes sense though, as Sean confirmed himself to be one of Anthony's friends when Trevor asked him what they do outside of Minecraft, so I assume they're real life friends, which means Anthony likely manipulates him outside of the game as well. So once again, we're left with Anthony as the prime suspect, but not much else. And even still, he's completely failed at manipulating Trevor, so there's no discernible motive behind what we know he eventually decides to do. However, there's still 4 more videos to cover, so something must happen between now and then. While this video doesn't really give us any clues, it does give us a better look at what kind of person Anthony is. So with that in mind, let's move on to day 5. January 8th, 2022. Trevor joins the server in the middle of a conversation with the other 3 members. Anthony says, "Alright, give me them," and Trevor asks him what he's talking about. Sean tells him they aren't talking to him and they go about their business. Brian says he has a lot of iron, and Anthony says they can go back up in a few minutes, so it's safe to assume they're probably mining. After that, he decides to go to Anthony's base for some reason, only to find 4 diamond blocks added to the deep slate chair. He asks Sean if they're giving Anthony diamonds, and he says yes. Trevor asks him why, considering he already has 4 spare blocks, and Sean falls back on the he deserves it argument from the last video. Trevor tells him that it won't hurt Anthony to do things himself, but Sean tells him it's rude. Anthony then tells him that he doesn't need to be jealous, demonizing him in front of the other members and apparently muting him afterwards so he can't fight back. Anthony then takes credit for making him stop talking, and Sean and Brian both assume that he was simply right about the jealousy accusation. After that, nothing much happens and the video ends. The dialogue here confirms that Anthony is very intentionally manipulating the other 2 members of the server, villainizing Trevor in front of them and then muting him so he seems right because Trevor can't talk and defend himself. It's impossible to say right now why Anthony is targeting Trevor, but it's possibly just because he's new, or maybe because he's the only person so far to actually go against what Anthony is trying to make happen. It's possible that this is the reason for what we know Trevor ends up doing. Anthony shunning him and making him seem like a bad guy may be harmful to his mental health. While it might be apparent to us that Anthony is the problem, Trevor may start to doubt himself, thinking that he's the issue and that Anthony is right. And this could be exactly what Anthony is trying to manipulate him into feeling. Whatever the case may be, it's almost guaranteed that Anthony is going to cause, or already is causing, what pushes Trevor over the line. But this isn't where the day ends. If you remember the timeline, you know that 2 videos take place on January 8th. This video, as well as the Entitled 2 video, which is yet another POV of Brian showing us his gameplay and some more Discord messages. The Discord chat in the background says this: "Did you see what he just said?" Yeah, why? "He doesn't seem to trust you when you told him that he'll like me." Really? Yeah, I don't know if he trusts you. Just keep an eye on the stuff he says, alright? Yeah, I will. You never know what someone's really like. I'm just trying to protect you guys. Thanks, man. Should I tell Sean? Yeah, go ahead. And then after that, just a hop-on message, supposedly to go mining together. These messages seem kind of random, but look at when they were sent. January 5th, 2022 at 7:52 p.m., which is the same time that Trevor recorded the second video. Trevor started the recording at 7:49 p.m., and 3 minutes later, we see him say, "We'll see," in response to Brian telling him that he'll like Anthony. So the time lines up perfectly. It's an insane takeaway from the response, "We'll see," so either Anthony has intense paranoia or he's intentionally exaggerating in an attempt to manipulate Brian. It's hard to say for certain. The gameplay itself also gives us some insight into Anthony's upbringing. We see in the chat history when Brian presses T that Anthony was talking to Sean about his parents and said this: "Anthony, are you AFK? Nah. Sorry, you were just standing still a lot. I figured it's fine. My mom died a few days ago, finally. She got what was coming to her. Same as my dad. You both burn in hell for all I care. Damn, sorry. Good. Don't talk to me or anyone else about it. I told you enough already. And after that, they stopped talking. This doesn't absolve Anthony of his manipulation, but it gives us a good look into his psyche. Nobody with good parents would ever speak of them like this. So clearly he was raised poorly by them, if they raised him at all. He's clearly not well. Nobody in his position would be. But how that's going to manifest and affect Trevor is still unknown. But with that in mind, let's move on to day 6. January 9th, 2022. Right away, things aren't right. Trevor joins and instantly we can see Anthony in his base, leaving as fast as he can. So clearly he was up to something, and based on his behavior up until now, I'm gonna guess he wasn't just leaving a nice gift. Trevor apparently didn't notice him there, and shortly after leaving, Anthony rejoins the game. Trevor asks how he's doing and why he left. Anthony just blatantly ignores the question and asks for a favor. He once again claims that the server has problems, but this time says that Trevor needs to download a mod to help fix it. And when questioned about why that's going to help, Anthony once again just falls back on the "it's hard to explain" argument. And then he says that the other members already have the mod, while they're conveniently offline to confirm or deny that fact. However, this gets Trevor to believe him, so he clearly trusts them more than Anthony, understandably so given how he's treated him so far. He agrees to download it after finding that out and ends the video early to do just that. If you understand basic internet security, this instantly raised a million red flags. If someone wants you to download a seemingly useless mod for no reason, then they're 101% trying to steal your information with a 1% margin of error. And I suspect that's what Anthony intends to do, considering he clearly doesn't like Trevor at all. It's impossible to know that for sure yet, but we'll keep it and everything else we've found so far in mind as we move on to the final day. January 10th, 2022. Trevor starts by asking if Anthony is online, and Sean replies that he isn't here and left a few hours ago, saying he had to take care of something, and then reaffirming how busy he is all the time, why he has to help, the whole ordeal. Trevor then starts building his house, but when he opens his chest to get some more wood, there's a book and quill for some reason. Last time we saw the inside of this chest, this wasn't here. However, he doesn't notice it, so it's impossible to say what it was or why it was there, but I assume Anthony placed it in the last video. We saw the inside of the chest on the 8th, and the only person we've seen in it between now and then was Anthony on the 9th. After finishing the walls of his house, Trevor decides to once again visit Anthony's base for some reason, finding a weird deep slate basement and a smelting area on his roof. He goes back down to the basement but is interrupted by a knocking sound coming very slightly from the left. He tells us that someone is at his door before we hear him get up and supposedly mute his mic. However, after a few seconds, we hear a bunch of letters getting mashed into the chat and a disconnecting sound. After a brief pause, he deletes the text and says he's going on vacation in the morning and forgot to tell everyone, and that he won't be active for a while, and then just ends the video. It's hard to say what happened here. It could be that the knock on the door was someone delivering bad news, causing him to smash his keyboard and give up, telling everyone he was leaving so they wouldn't worry about him when he's gone. But is that even what happened, and who was it? The answer is more unsettling than you might expect. Let's go back over the clues we have so far, because clearly at some point we didn't connect the right dots, or there just isn't any clear conclusion to draw from these videos, which I find unlikely. For example, the weird leaves. They seem like a bug, which is probably intended, as even before Anthony wanted Trevor to download a mod to fix it, he kept talking about a server bug. So I assume he did this as a backup plan to get people to download the mod he mentioned on the 9th. Occasionally talking about a bug and planting seeds of doubt by making the trees look strange is an easy way to make people less hesitant when he suddenly tells them about a major server bug he can't fix without them downloading a mod. If this is true, then Anthony is incredibly calculated, going out of his way to prepare for plans he may or may not even need to use. Because of this, combined with the fact that he's very manipulative, paranoid, and had a traumatic upbringing, I think it's safe to assume that he's probably a psychopath. His lust for power over the other two members of the server has led him to spend days on end setting up plots to control what they do, and we can only guess what he does to Sean in real life. Because of that, I think there's a good possibility that Trevor didn't end his life. Anthony did. That might seem like a big leap to take. After all, why would he do that? What's his motive? There's no way he's that angry about some guy being disruptive of his friend group, right? Well, not entirely. When dealing with a psychopath, any tiny reason could be enough to incur bloodlust, and there are plenty of cases of this happening in real life. For example, in 2007, a 16-year-old boy named Daniel Petrie killed his neighbor Gabriel over some money he borrowed for a game. However, this is an incredibly graphic case, so I won't discuss it in detail, but if you're interested, you can find the information on Google. Be advised, it's not for the faint of heart. When I say it's graphic, I'm not exaggerating at all. Regardless, the point is that a lot of murder cases center around money, personal conflict, and power, so Anthony being a suspect isn't that much of a leap. But how would he have done it, and how can we know for sure? Well, the mod could definitely help him. If he used it to gain information on Trevor, he could have gotten his IP, city, state. Any information stored on his computer could possibly be accessed by whatever he downloaded, especially if it was a lot more than just a jar file. On top of that, Trevor has been a major threat to Anthony's manipulation tactics, not really ever buying into them and attempting to get Brian and Sean to do the same, which would give Anthony a legitimate motive for a psychopath. Based on the Discord conversation we see in the second Untitled video, he's trying to convince the other members not to trust Trevor. And if he's done this once, he's likely done it in other places we never got to see. On top of that, the night that Trevor died is the same night Anthony had coincidentally been gone for multiple hours according to Sean. And even this text could imply that Anthony got attacked. Well, let me explain. Take a listen to this audio from Trevor getting a jacket in the second video. We can clearly hear his footsteps going to the right, opening a door and walking back, which means his closet is on his right. And in the final video, we hear a knock coming slightly from the left, so the door to his house or room must be on that side, putting his setup somewhere in the middle. And if that's the case, then this text was likely caused by a struggle, as all of the keys pressed are going from left to right on a keyboard, exactly how they would if someone crashed into it. Combined with the unplugging sound shortly after, it would suggest that there's a struggle going on inside of his room. Another strong piece of evidence is the chat afterwards. Not only is it just inherently suspicious, but it's most certainly not Trevor typing. In every video so far, Trevor has consistently not used apostrophes and always capitalized the starts of his messages. Meanwhile, Anthony and the other members of the server have always used apostrophes and only capitalized I's. And it just so happens that after this text is deleted, the person starts typing exactly like that. This would also explain the book and quill. I suspect that it was a fake suicide note made to be an alibi, that way Trevor's death would be more believable. If this is the case, then Anthony had been plotting this for at least 2 days before he did it, possibly longer. Since day one, he's been paranoid enough to have a mod set up to steal the information of anyone he needs to by using the trees as an alibi for his bug. And since day 2, he's had a strong distaste for Trevor, as indicated by the Discord chat in the second Untitled video. On day 3, Trevor questions his judgment, and on day 4, they argue over a throne. On day 5, he gets muted and Anthony gaslights the other members into thinking that Trevor is jealous of them. And on day 6, the suicide note is set. And on day 7, it all comes to an end in Trevor's room, where he fights for his life, but fails to stay alive at the hands of a psychopath hell-bent on control. The worst part about this, however, is at the start. Oscar says that the police were involved, and yet still calls it a suicide, which means Anthony got away with it. And we have no way of knowing what else he may have done since. The truth of his death will never be known to his brother or his parents, and they'll forever live feeling guilty that they didn't help. All while the psychopath truly responsible runs free with blood-stained hands. But in a way, Anthony was right. You never really know what someone is like.
Cause of death, suicide.